Hi, folks. Welcome to Radio FM 88 Australia. And today, all the way from the United States on the West Coast in Sacramento, California, we've got Chris Cade, who's been invited by our good friend Julia to be on tonight's show. So I'm saying tonight, in fact, it's actually in the afternoon here in Australia, just purely for the fact of the time zone difference. So without further ado, let's get straight to the chase, and Julia will bring Chris and the reason why we've invited Chris. Thank you very much.
Yes, hello, welcome everyone to Dreaming the New Dream. Delighted to have Chris Cade joining us today. Chris Cade leads an empowerment movement and began his journey in 2006 from Silicon Valley, from being married and from having done lots of other things, and went on this marvelous journey, which part of it was bringing this book, The Course in Miracles, in an easily digestible form to lots of people's emails in 150 countries around the world. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Julia and Jeff. I am looking forward to the conversation and serving everyone who's listening and watching today.
That's great. And you have your T-shirt saying blessed.
Yes.
You do that intentionally to sort of remind you of how blessed you are. Tell us about it. What were the biggest blessings for you?
Yes. Well, for me, I found that if I'd go to spiritual retreats and workshops, back a couple weeks later, I kind of start forgetting what I had learned and going back into my old habits and patterns. So I wanted things in my life to remind me. So I made mugs and hats and shirts and things like that. So I've got a whole wardrobe of different shirts with different sayings that, I just kind of land into whatever I really want to hold on to embody, to manifest and create. And so tonight, I really wanted to step into the state of feeling blessed, of offering blessings, of really being the blessing for everyone listening, and hope that whatever truth comes through us, resonates.
That's gorgeous, Chris, because you know what? I just opened this book at random before we started, and I just came to this page 85. Interesting, and I'll read it out for you, Jeff, as well, and the listeners. The ego cannot oppose the laws of God any more than you can, but it can interpret them according to what it wants, just as you can. That's why the question, what do you want to be blessed, must be answered. You're answering it every minute and every second and each moment of decision is a judgment that is anything but ineffectual. So there you go. Thank you for the blessing and
You're
the
welcome.
affirmation and the reminder.
Yeah, what a beautiful synchronicity there, although nothing is sent to us by accident, so nor is anyone.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about your journey from sort of software engineer and, what I was calling plain vanilla.
Yeah. So, so I was in the corporate world working for Hitachi, and I was married, had a kid on the way, really just kind of the white picket fence, perfect life, 6-figure income, had a Silicon Valley condo, you name it. I had the ego's idea of the perfect life. And so anyway, as relationship challenges would come up, although I was a good heart-centered person, I wasn't really self-aware at all and interested in personal growth. So relationship challenges would come up. I would listen for a couple hours, pick up the rug, sweep the issues under, drop the rug, pretend like it never happened. And going through this for some number of months, eventually my wife at the time said, either get a spiritual path or get a divorce lawyer. I didn't want either one, to be honest. My ego was furious. I felt not just between a rock and a hard place. I mean, I felt like she was threatening to take away everything that I valued. But reluctantly, I went to the store, looked at the book section, looked at spirituality books, and found one that I thought, okay, well, random book, random page, open it up, and it says, spirituality, what's in it for me? This whole book is answering my niece's question. Why should I care about spirituality? So I read the book, loved it, started then reading more books. As you mentioned, I eventually went to the Monroe Institute and did their Gateway Voyage program. Later on became a student of the Diamond Approach, of A Course in Miracles. And that started me down the path of spirituality at a very fast rate, because I realized that I was really liking who I was becoming. So the ego, of course, was loving the whole process, and that's what it tends to do, right? Is first we have it attached to the worldly view, and then we find the spiritual perspective, and then we attach the ego to that. And we go, well, I'm a great meditator, or I'm a great spiritual student, or whatever it happens to be. And so, yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. I was loving the spiritual path because it was changing me and empowering me. And over time, I started to realize that the path that I was on was deeper than that, that it wasn't just about feeling happier or more joyful or living a better dream. It was really about becoming more present, becoming more here and now. And so that was the journey that I took from the Silicon Valley 6-figure income, married with a kid, to the spiritual path and becoming an entrepreneur. And I let my employer know in 2009 that I would be leaving. If they wanted to lay me off, that would be fine. Just don't make it someone else if they had to. And so they did. They gave me the choice of a promotion, which I turned down. And then, they said, okay, well, then we're going to go ahead and lay you off instead. So that was the journey.
Really interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm quite interested in what you're saying about, the learning to be present, because, before all of that, you actually were a champion in Taekwondo. So I would expect you would actually be very good at being in the present, like completely 360-degree focused.
One would think. Yeah, one would think. And I would say that perhaps martial arts and competition were the one place where I really was present and in my body, because there's not really any other place you can be. Outside of that, though, I often lived in the future in fantasy. I falsely believed that because I didn't live in the past, that I was living in the moment. And it took moving down the spiritual path to realize that that was also just a false dichotomy, because I was still living in the future, looking towards the next day, the next paycheck, the next adventure, whatever it happened to be. So yeah, martial arts did offer me, I guess, a brief moment of being present in an otherwise fairly non-present life.
And tell us a little more about the Monroe Institute's Gateway Voyage program, because I think we've heard about that being that was the CIA, or was that the Army one where they were doing remote viewing?
It's tied into that. So what happened was in the 70s, Robert Monroe, he was basically a radio. I don't know exactly what he did in the radio industry, but he was very into radio, and he started having out-of-body experiences spontaneously. He thought something was wrong. He didn't know what was going on. So he would sit there and get his psychologist friend to check him out. And his psychologist friend, you're good. He went to the cardiologist. He went to his doctors. Everyone said, you are completely healthy, so don't worry about it. So he kept doing these out-of-body experiences and allowing it to happen. What he then realized was that with his radio background, he could use brainwave entrainment frequencies to actually help facilitate that for himself. So he was one of the early, if not the earliest, pioneers of using brainwave entrainment for personal development and spiritual growth. He developed the Institute as a way of researching this. So he wanted to not just have it be kind of a pie in the sky, like fantasy type thing. He wanted people to actually be able to measure, to verify their experiences. And so he developed the Institute and started applying scientific processes to all the things he was going through, to the meditations and the brainwave entrainment and the processes and all that. So the first book I read talked about this guy's experiences at the Neuro Institute. I said, that sounds really interesting, because I always had kind of psychic orientation, that resonated with me. I had some psychic type experiences when I was younger. So even though I didn't think of myself as spiritual or personal growth oriented, I still had some of those experiences. So reading about them in the Monroe Institute really intrigued me. It made me say, okay, well, what is it like to be more than my body, to feel myself as more than my physical body? And that's the whole premise of the path with the Monroe Institute. And so the Gateway Voyage program is a week-long program that has guided meditations with brainwave entrainment. I think it's about 3 times a day. And we go through processes, do self-exploration, come back in a group, facilitate and grow. And so you had brought up Stargate, CIA, and remote viewing. So where that ties in is Robert Monroe's daughter married Joe McMoneagle, and Joe McMoneagle was the main guy in the CIA Stargate program. He was basically the one that they were studying, that was doing most of the Cold War spying on Russia and everything else with the CIA. And so because he married into the family, he also teaches there sometimes, and they use his expertise for their remote viewing programs.
Did you try remote viewing yourself?
Yes, and I was quite surprised at how successful I was, because I didn't expect to be. Basically, all they did is they sat us in a room and said, here's some coordinates. And I was like, coordinates? What do you want me to do with these? And they said, start drawing. So I just drew whatever impressions came to me. And lo and behold, I drew, a box, I drew a river, some trees, a big arch. I didn't know what I was drawing. Later on, they showed us, and it was a picture of St. Louis with the arch, and the view was actually from the way that my drawing had been done. And so for me, it was really kind of jolting, because, to believe in psychic phenomena, to have a few experienced is one thing, but then to be faced with evidence that I can't deny of my own, it really made me think differently. And it was good to have that experience early on in my spiritual path to help wake me up, to help me look at myself as larger than myself and realize that whatever this is, and there's many belief systems, and I don't purport to have any answers as to what connects us all in, spirit. I mean, I use spirit, God, universe, we can use quantum field, creation, source. I think any of those, depending on the person, can work. I don't know what the answer is, but my experience as a software tester in Silicon Valley is that I don't need to know the answer, the mechanism of how it works. But as a tester, I would put inputs into a system and see what came out. And what became clear to me over time is if I put in the inputs of intention, of manifestation, of creation, of presence, of commitment to the spiritual path, then what came out on the other end was a life that was more peaceful, that was more connected, more service-oriented, felt more authentic.
Mm-hmm. And, almost easy. I mean, imagine getting that the first time. I mean, certainly in the movie, they didn't make it look like it was that easy at all. But I do remember when What the Bleep was really big, and, Ramsar, and I went to one of the conferences, and they did these exercises where, you're with a group of strangers you've never met, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be practicing telepathy. And, you're looking at each other, you're sort of trying to pick up the brainwaves, and then you're supposed to draw something, and it might be a triangle or a circle or shape. But that was just one of the experiments to prove that, it is possible, or that the brainwaves, don't actually have to be expressed through vocal communication, right, that they seem to be projected and arrive.
Yeah, telepathy was one of the earliest experiences I had. I remember being maybe 18, 19 years old at the most. I was visiting a friend at college, and my friend's roommate and I just connected, and we were having great conversation, stayed up really late at night. And I remember this moment where she was telling me about her she basically mentioned that she had a safe space, and then she went on. And when she said she had a safe space, I had a vision of it. And I can still see that vision now. It's, trees, there's a river, there's a hammock, it's just a beautiful scenery. And I started describing that to her, and then she didn't say anything. I was like, okay, am I just I was feeling kind of weird at that moment, out of my element, feeling like maybe I'd made a fool out of myself in front of this, new person that I was kind of starting to crush on a little bit. And so I asked her, about a week later, hey, when I described your safe space, was that it? And she said, that was exactly it. And so then, the week later, college had, was starting for me. It was the first day of college. Maybe it was before or after that. I don't remember the exact timeline, but around that time, first day of college, and we're going around the room, and this teacher says, hey, tell us your name, your major, and your favorite cookie. And so people are going around, and in my head, I hear macadamia nut. And the very next person says their favorite cookie is macadamia nut. And I'm like, okay, I can't deny what's going on. I don't understand it, but I can't deny it. And so for me, I've always been a tester. I mean, even in those moments, like it's not enough for me to have the experience without some way of validating it. Because I really feel that if we're going to walk down any path and support others to lead them, to teach them, or just to be by their side, whatever that looks like, if we're going to say that we're walking down a path, I think it makes sense to be able to say, based on my experience, here's what I know, because, there's so many different belief systems, and spirituality has a ton of them. And it's easy to get caught into, again, the spiritual ego side of things, which belief system is right, why is it right, and so on. Whereas when we can actually step into the present moment and say, well, based on my direct experience, this is what I found to be true, and I hope it supports you. That gives people the freedom to have their own experiences, to walk their own path, and to find out what's true for them. Because if we're talking about quantum physics, and if that model is valid, then we could have a lot of different belief systems manifesting in different ways, different places, and so on. And so it would be really arrogant of me to believe that somehow I would know better than someone else's direct experience.
No, absolutely. I think that's fair. But as you say, then shaping the collective consciousness in a way that's empowering and transformative is seems to have been part of your path. So
yeah,
in terms of the Course of Miracles, which is how we connected, what direct experience did you have that persuaded you that this was worth backing, not just with with your time and a lot of time commitment and resources?
Right.
Can I just interrupt there? Because
absolutely.
This question is still going around in my head, and you've left me right to the very beginning when you told me about the wife's giving you a choice, and it's been playing in my head. Have you still got the wife and you still got the child?
1 out of 2. My son is still with me. I'm a single full-time father as an entrepreneur, and part of that process was realizing that I wasn't in a marriage that was for the highest good, that we weren't ideal partners for each other. And so that's what led me to eventually file for divorce and go on our own ways. So that was totally fine. Yeah,
I just wanted to know how you got pushed. I just know how you got pushed there, and I'm thinking, okay, well, did you get pushed in the right direction, and did you remain?
But that was the ultimate irony, right? The ultimate irony was the threat of divorce to stay together, and then ultimately my spiritual path is what led to the divorce. So that has definitely stuck with me over the years. And feel free to interrupt me anytime, because a conversation and connection, that's what this is about, being present. And so to come back to A Course in Miracles, I was living in San Jose at the time, and it was 2007, I want to say. And I went to a psychic like fair type place. And I had heard of A Course in Miracles. It's like July timeframe right now. And I see this booth on the side of A Course in Miracles. I'm like, okay, that's curious. I'll go over and walk and check it out. And the people there were just so peaceful and light-filled. And I just felt safe and at home with them. And so one of them said, hey, would you like a healing? And, keep in mind, this is at the very beginning of my spiritual journey. And so I said, sure, I'd love a healing. I don't know what that is, but I'll take one. I sit down and they say, okay, close our eyes, sit there for a moment. A few minutes later, they say, okay, we're done. I go, where's the healing? Like, what's up here? Like, I feel the same, And so I thought, okay, well, I don't know what to do with that. But A Course in Miracles seemed legit. It seemed like these people genuinely were showing up in a way that was different than what I was accustomed to in my daily life. Yeah. So I went out and looked for A Course in Miracles, and I found the workbook. It's like, wow, that's cool. The workbook, lesson 1, January 1st. It's like, that doesn't work. This is July. Like I was really taken back by the lack of systems in the world that would really support someone on A Course in Miracles. This is back in 2007, like I said. And so I thought about, well, what would I make for myself? I would make a system where I could take lesson 1 on any day that I start and do it for 365 days after that. And so I literally made the system that I wanted just so I could study A Course in Miracles. And then I started giving that away to other people so they could take the daily lessons whenever they signed up. And that's how Julia ended up connecting, is through those daily workbook lessons. And so, yeah, for me, that was what happened. I needed a different kind of support in my life that wasn't available at the time. And now you can get that support in other places as well. But at the time, if you didn't start on January 1st, you couldn't get daily emails, that would start from the first lesson.
So interesting, because one of our other speakers, she would remember Susan Lander, Jeff. She was trying to work out scheduling. She actually defaulted to Benjamin Franklin's method of scheduling. So she had his scheduling in the kitchen, and then he appeared and started having a chat to her about more than schedules. But I just really like listening to you, Chris, because I can really relate to and I just love the fact that you just organized it in a digestible form that you could deal with it on your own terms.
Yeah, I feel that's really important. People need to find the path that works for them. A Course in Miracles is very clear that it is but one path of many. The curriculum is not optional only when we decide we're going to take the curriculum. And so, some people, Buddha found spirituality in the tree, right? In just sitting, right? He also had lots of adventures and journeys, but ultimately found it in sitting. I also studied the Diamond approach for almost 10 years, and that's another path that was tremendously supportive. For some people, it's the Monroe Institute. For some people, it's Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism. I mean, it doesn't matter what the path is. Ultimately, if it is one that is bringing you to the present moment in communion with yourself and communion with, God, Spirit, Universe, Allah, whatever resonates with you, then that path is leading you towards the truth. And it doesn't really matter what the words are. So for A Course in Miracles, I found that the weighty tome, the weighty blue tome, as they say, the text part of it was a lot harder to digest. But the workbook lessons, I realized, one email a day, that's manageable.
And what miracles did you manifest on the way?
That's a big question.
It is.
$1 million prize question.
Yes, it is. It's interesting because there have been little miracles and big ones. In A Course in Miracles, the ultimate miracle is to be present, right? That is the ultimate healing, the ultimate miracle, because when we are present, we are free of ego. We are free of everything that inhibits us from being authentic. However that would be that we would show up in the moment. So those miracles, I experience regularly with increasing frequency, and still it's a work in progress. Even though I speak about presence, that's very much because that's the path I'm on to work towards, not because I live in that space all the time every day. And although that would be quite an adventure, and I'm curious what that might look like. As for more concrete miracles, as I'm sure people are sort of attaching to and wanting to hear about, there's two that come to mind. One of them is back in 2010, I had been really feeling compelled to swim with wild dolphins, and I didn't know why. Previous to that, I didn't have like a major dolphin love. I liked them, but I didn't love them, And so end of 2009, I started really feeling called. And so I put out the intention out there that I wanted to go on a wild dolphin swim retreat. And so what came up was I was becoming an entrepreneur at the time. I did a big product launch, and an opportunity to swim with wild dolphins came up that was right at the tail end of my launch. And I thought, okay, I want to, it's not the right timing, so I let it go. Well, at this time, I had left the corporate world. I left the corporate world. My funds were starting to dwindle. They were tight. And so then early 2010, I get an email from the Monroe Institute saying that two of their facilitators would be doing a wild dolphin swim retreat. And instantly I was like, that's a yes. I'm supposed to be there. Absolutely. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this at all. No clue. But I said, this is going to go fast. So I just put my deposit in immediately and said, I'll figure the rest out later. I don't know how. And then a few months later, as we're getting closer to the wild dolphin swim retreat, turns out I get an unexpected check from an old real estate investment I had back in the corporate world that had liquidated some assets, and that covered a large chunk of the retreat. It wasn't 100% there. Then I was on the retreat. I had just, like, not quite on the retreat. I was flying there. I landed in Florida, and I just sent an email to my my brand new bookkeeper. I just hired her within like a month or two. And I said, hey, this experience I'm having, I think like some of it might be tax deductible. I don't know what, and she's like, your job is personal and spiritual growth to serve others. So anything that is personal growth oriented for you, any workshops, retreats, anything is tax deductible. So your whole trip is tax deductible. And I thought, wow. So between the money that came in from the real estate and the tax deduction, it covered the whole trip. And I was just like, it really showed me that there is an opportunity here to follow our heart, to be present, right? I didn't know why I had this wish to swim with dolphins, but I was present with what was real in me. And so then I went ahead and just kept following one step at a time and seeing how it manifested. And that was how it manifested. The other miracle, unfortunately, I am not at legal liberty to discuss, which is sort of strange to say. It's the biggest miracle of my life, and it involved many miracles along the way. Someday there may be a book and or movie about it. But as for now, all I can say is that it's even now I can feel how powerful it was and how much it touched me. And when the time comes that I can speak about it, like I said, it'll probably become definitely a book and possibly a movie, because it's something that other people will need to hear and support them when that opportunity is available. So I wish I could say more, but it's very rich in me, very emotional, very impactful. So I look forward to when that is able to be on a larger stage.
Cocoon 3, is it? Cocoon 3.
Well, I didn't quite follow you.
Cocoon, there's 1, 2, and then you're obviously going to be 3, yeah?
Right.
That was quite surreal down that part of the world in Florida, Key West. Real strong connection there, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm going to hold you to it. Let's move on.
Yeah, no, that was that leap of faith that you made with the dolphins. Sounded, that's basically often what's needed. And when you were talking about the second one, we could feel the vibrations.
Yeah.
In that place. So that it speaks volumes on its own. So what was it like swimming with the wild dolphins? Where was that?
That was in the Bahamas, in Bimini specifically, and it was wonderful. There were moments, just being out in the big blue sea with the snorkel on, just floating there. And at one point, there was maybe 15 or 20 dolphins that all just swam at me and just, went completely around me and under me, because I was floating and around and under. And it was just very, it was, again, I don't have a lot of words for it. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. It was abundant. It was magical. And, there were other moments with the dolphins, but that one really stood out as, as impactful. And it was great to go out, for a week and go out and look for the dolphins and swim with them. And then to combine that with the brainwave entrainment meditations from the Diamond approach that we were doing morning and evening. I usually fell asleep in the evening meditations. The morning ones, I was good. I was awake and ready for. But after a whole day out at sea and swimming, by the time I got to nighttime, I'd be up for about 10 minutes, and then I'd just be out for the rest of the meditation. But it was great to have those experiences elevating our frequency and really helping us sort of get in sync with dolphins. Because one of the things that I love about dolphins is, they actually are whole brain thinkers, And so the fact that their hemispheres left and right are in sync all the time, except when they're sleeping, they literally shut down one side of the brain to sleep and then shut down the other because they're conscious breathers. But the idea that they're using their whole brain, all of their waking time, was really impactful because that's really what brainwave entrainment seeks to do. We have left hemisphere in humans and right hemisphere, and what happens is brainwave entrainment sends one sound into the left ear and a slightly different one in the right ear, and the brain then tries to equalize and connect them, basically. By doing that, it connects the left and right brains, and so therefore we can access deeper states of consciousness, creativity, focus. One of the great things about brainwave entrainment that I love is literally the right frequencies can control your brain state and make you hyper-focused or deeply meditative or, any of the other states of consciousness that we have.
Yeah, they say that about Einstein, that he didn't actually have a bigger brain. He just had more connections between his right and left hemispheres. And that was why he could perceive and download. Jeff?
I would do it.
I would call it
Jeff, have you experimented with brainwave?
Imagineering, I call it.
Yeah.
Imagineering. Hey, I've had that experience with a school of dolphins up at Kona.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Hawaii, yeah. So you've got underwood footage and all that stuff. Those Hawaiians, they're pretty cheeky. They call it leapfrogging. So they go out there, you've got to wear snorkel gear, and they go about 200 meters in front of the school, and they throw you in. And then the pod comes around. Oh, first time, mate, it was bloody amazing. So then you get back in the boat, and then the boat goes in front of the dolphins again. They throw you in again. So they do it 3 times, eh? Yeah, they're really good at it. And I tell you, they just come up so close to you, and you're getting pinged. But I've always had a relationship with dolphins. I mean, you just send out a thought, and then they come. But I think you were verbalizing, or just to say they talk in holographic pictures. And I remember one morning waking up, and I knew instinctively where I had to go, because they gave me the picture where I had to go on the Gold Coast. So I went down, and sure enough, in come the 2 dolphins, just like in the morning state. And we had this a connection. And of course, that Aquaman, where you get all the little circles. Yeah. So I traveled underwater. I was sitting on the side on the beach there, but traveling underwater, and then linked up with the prime dolphin there, and they gave me this imagery of how to communicate with them in a particular key. Yeah. So I'm always looking for the appropriate person who knows how to work with a particular frequency in the key of E. So yeah.
That's beautiful.
So I fully understood exactly where you're coming from when you were talking about it. I was just taken back to that particular memory. So.
Oh, I bet. And Hawaii is amazing.
So did you get the whales too, or what? Because I just had an experience with whales last night, actually. Just out of Brisbane here, there's a place called Moreton Island. We went right up to the tip to the Cape Lighthouse there, and the whales were just coming up, and you could hear the whale song. It was just been amazing getting pinged by that as well. So, I mean, I suppose you watch Star Trek, the Voyage Home, where they went and saved the 2 whales.
Star Trek 4, right? That was when that was the funny one where Spock brought in a lot more of his humor too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Watched that when my dad was a Trekkie, and so I ended up watching a lot of the episodes. Next Generation, most of the movies. I don't remember all of them, but that one definitely stuck out in my mind.
I think that contributed to a change of consciousness on the planet to save the dolphins. I would say save the whales, but more importantly, instead of slaughtering them, going out there is a relationship in their habitat. It's become quite big business here on the east coast of Australia.
Yeah. I unfortunately never swam with them. That is another experience that I would really like to have, and I look forward to.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah. Julia, back to you. Sorry.
Yeah. So, Chris, you've talked a bit about the Diamond Project, and I actually don't know anything about it. Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah. So, in this, going back to my story a little bit about spirituality and leaving the corporate world, in this process of where I had read this one book, well, at the back of it was a whole list of other books. And so what I did is I would have this experience where I would put 5 or 6 books out in front of me, see which one was calling me, and I would read that one once I finished it, I would repeat the process with, 5 books and so on. And so I went to the Monroe Institute, as I mentioned, to the Gateway Voyage. While I was there, both of the facilitators had been Diamond Approach students for many years. And so they recommended reading a book called Diamond Heart Book 1. So I was like, okay, I bought the book because at the time I was still in Silicon Valley. So it's like, okay, I can buy as many books as I want. This is not relevant, And so I bought the book, didn't read it, still didn't read it, had it in front of me, pick another book. Finally, I picked up Diamond Heart Book 1 and read it. And I got to chapter 3, I believe it was 3. I don't remember the number exactly, but 3 is one of my favorite numbers, so we'll call it chapter 3 for now. And it was the chapter on truth. And it really struck a chord with me. It was the first time I had read something that actually changed my life. Because most of the time we read a book, we get some good ideas, maybe we get some practices, we apply a few things in our lives, but it's pretty rare that reading something fundamentally changes the way that we think. And so for me, Diamond Heart Book 1, the chapter on truth, it did that because it looked at what we really want to experience as human beings and gave me a new perspective. Because coming out of the corporate world, having the pretty white picket fence, ego's perfect dream, and so on, it pointed out that, when we want objects, really what we want is the feeling that we have, right? And that's a common law of attraction manifestation teaching, right? Is that we don't really want the object. We want what we are feeling. If we see a super fancy sports car, what we really want is the feeling of aliveness. When we have, want to manifest a soulmate, what we're wanting is deeper connection. We're wanting to feel more connection. So anyway, whatever it is that we think we want, what we really want is the emotion. And that's kind of the law of attraction manifestation teachings. Well, Diamond Heart Book 1, the chapter on truth, went one step deeper. And it said, if you're just chasing even the emotion of happiness, then you're still in the ego state, chasing what you think is happiness, what you think will make you happy. And so what Diamond Heart offered was, what if instead of seeking happiness, joy, connection, aliveness, what if instead of seeking those things, we did one thing only, and that is pursue the truth. Whatever it is, pursue the truth of our moment, the truth of ourselves, and allow that to reveal to us all these other things. And so that one shift made me realize that I don't need to pursue happiness. If I actually just focus on the truth, on being present, then if happiness is what the present moment would call for, it will naturally arise. And that was something that was really revolutionary for me, to realize that I didn't have to grasp at what I wanted. I could be here now and trust the moment to actually bring forth whatever it was that would be appropriate for that moment, whether it's joy, happiness, sorrow, right? There's all these emotions we can have that we might push away or grasp towards. And when we're present, they can arise authentically. And so the Diamond Heart Book 1 chapter on truth opened me up to that. And I thought to myself, if this is what a book could do, what could the actual school do? If I worked with a teacher and a group, what would that be like? So I went to a group, and this is, I think, end of 2006, I want to say. And I had an experience there, and they were working on the relationship that we have between our pain and our compassion, and how when we can really know the truth about our pain, where it comes from in the present moment, we can find a deeper compassion for ourselves and others. And I thought, okay, this was a good teaching. I was still fairly solid on my ego. A good teaching. If they did it on joy, that would be great, because joy was the thing I wanted at that time in my life. So obviously, even though the book changed my life, still the challenges of spiritual development are that it's a journey. right? And so I can look back now and see that I was still grasping for that joy experience. I thought if they did all this spiritual growth and these processes on joy, now that would be something I could get behind. And so I kept coming every few months to the Diamond Approach. And after about 6 months, I looked back and said, wow, I actually like who I'm becoming. I like the changes in my life. I feel calmer. I feel more courageous. I feel more strength. And not like strength over someone, just the strength to be myself, the strength to be in the world, to be solid. And so that's when I said, and for that whole 6 months prior, every time I went, I would tell my teachers, I don't know if I'm coming back. And they say, that's fine. I said, I don't know if I'm coming back. That's fine. So 6 months later, I looked back and said, I'm in 100%. This is amazing and powerful and life-changing. So I studied that actively as a student for about 7 years in group with a private teacher, as well as a small group, the whole format that they have. And I found that it took me on a journey deeper into the present moment, because the Diamond Approach really is founded on a combination of using psychological and spiritual practices that support being present and support curiosity. And that's really all it is being present and being curious about your experience. And from that, honestly, I would say, and this is going to sound like a big promise, but everything good in life comes from that. If you can be present and curious, then that is everything that we could possibly want in life. And I didn't believe that for a long time. It sounded kind of pie in the sky, sounded kind of a little too spiritual to me. But what I realized as I got later down my spiritual path is that when I was genuinely present and when I was genuinely curious, there was no experience I could have that wouldn't bring me back to wanting to know myself more fully. And that's always a present moment experience, because we can't really know ourselves in the past. We can't know our future selves. We can only really have self-knowledge in the present moment. And I realized that was all I ever wanted, was to be present. And every time I wanted something else, I realized it points back to the present moment.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that chapter 3 axiom was pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It flipped my world upside down.
Yeah. And that is, sort of, for me, it was more like Buddha, sort of suffering is in resistance or attachment to, chasing something or trying to run away from something. But like you said, if we tend to try and preempt stuff, and of course, as we grow up, we see somebody getting stuff and you get left behind, so you've got to run, or you got to get out of there before you get into trouble. So it's kind of this unconscious behavior, but it's all in response to trying to get an advantage or keep safe.
Yeah. Well, you bring up something really important, which is the experience of healing on the spiritual path, right? Because so many of us come from a place of having some kind of trauma in our life, whether it's big or small. With 50% of marriages ending in divorce, that's half of the world, half of, kids experiencing, some kind of trauma. And that's not including all of the, war, domestic violence, poverty. I mean, all kinds of traumas that we have in life to build up in us. So what drives a lot of people to a spiritual path is the desire to heal. They want to let go of the pain. And so it's a very noble and earnest endeavor to want to get rid of our pain. But that is no less egocentric than any other desire to have, the faster car, the better relationship, more money. And so one of the things I found, especially in the Diamond Approach, was that healing can happen spontaneously. It can happen in the moment. So often we, on the spiritual path, feel that we have to do some sort of healing process to get somewhere, to let go of an experience. And it's still, even though it's in earnest, it's still an ego-driven process. If I do this thing, I will get this outcome which my ego desires. And what I found in my own spiritual journey is that people who keep doing that often are re-traumatizing themselves. They keep reliving the painful past, hoping that if they go through it enough times, they'll be able to let go of it. And it turns out that there is a much faster and more effective way to actually heal, which is to be in the present moment. Going back to the healing that I talked about with the Course in Miracles, with the people there, the healing, literally to be in the present moment, is what offers us the healing, because then we are not in the future and we're not in the past. The past does not live in us in the present moment. But here's the interesting thing. If in the present moment that painful past is coming up, then that is in the present moment, and it's an opportunity to let go of it. And when I say let go, I'm not talking about something we actively have to do. What I mean is, if we are present, if we are sensing our hands, our feet, our bodies, if we are present in our body, then when the painful experience comes up, what happens is our body being present has a container by which it can actually allow it to be released. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they're healing is they stay just in their head. It's a mental process. Think, 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 think. If I think the right things, if I go through the right techniques, I can let it go. But it turns out when we're only in our head, we don't actually let go of the past, because so much of our trauma is actually neurological, it's physiological, it's in our bodies. So the ability to be present with it while it moves through us ultimately is what allows us to heal. And there's a whole body of work called somatic experiencing that uses that model very deeply. And so, that's professional. And for anyone who really is experiencing trauma, I would recommend somatic experiencing. However, for those who are just wanting to know, how do I heal, some of these things that are coming up, be in the present moment and then be curious about the present moment. And you can ask yourself a question like, what do I most need to know about this experience? Then you land in your body and see what comes up in the present moment. And so that's a way in which the present moment can actually allow us to find peace and solace where we may have previously found only further pain.
So for a mere male, it's me. I'm speaking on behalf of all the Australian males here. We basically don't get into our emotional body. I mean, we've been taught, big boys don't cry, and then you're playing sports, and you're playing group sports, and you don't give anything away. So it's a mental application. Then boy meets girl, and the girl starts talking, and you're thinking, oh my God, when's she going to shut up? And she just wants to talk, and then as she talks, she sees the picture in her mind, so she relates. And so we then want to be the knight in shining armor to go in there and, okay, we'll sort this out. But essentially, it's taken me decades to learn when the woman's talking, just listen, because she's not really actually asking you for the answer, because she's really going through that process. Yeah. And you got to step out of your suit of armor, and you got to remove your castle, and you got to remove your moat, and you got to remove your drawbridge to become who you truly are as a male, which is be open and communicate and talk about what the woman's doing. The woman's really showing you the path, but we haven't been awake to that particular path that they've been showing us. I mean, the next question, of course, is once that emotion starts hitting us mere males, it's God's a tsunami, and it's a tidal wave coming through, and it's one of the hardest things that I've had to learn in my life is why have I done this to myself, and why am I allowing this emotion wave come through my body? So I'm interested to hear what you say about living in the present. I mean, when you get this tsunami wave of emotions coming through, and you're getting tears coming out of your eyes, and you think, oh my God, what's going on here? I mean, what's your process then?
My process is land in the body fully, because there's something very powerful. And it's easier said than done. So one of the first things you need to take your hands and, put them on something, feel those sensations, have your feet planted on the ground, feel the impact of your foot on the ground. If you need to, slide a little bit to notice the friction. Okay. But here's the thing is when we are landed in our bodies, all these emotions have a grounding by which they can be dispersed. Okay. What happens so often, and I had the whole same thing as you talked about, big boys don't cry, suck it up, keep going on, move on. I was the pillar of strength whenever anything was going wrong or painful in the family. I was one that had to hold it together for everyone. And that is an old toxic masculinity patriarchal version of strength. But what you and I speak to is the courage and strength of the spiritual path. And when I talked earlier about having authentic strength, that's what it is, to be able to ground, to be solid in oneself enough so that when those feelings come through, and they can feel overwhelming, instead of getting lost in the head, which is where we often go, and especially as males, that's where we were taught to go. If we can actually fully land in the body, what happens is those waves of emotions have a place to land and then disperse. And so if you find it difficult to be in your body when the emotions come up, it's very powerful. If you can take deep breaths while it's happening, that's great. But if you can't remember to take deep breaths, the practice doesn't do you any good, right? And so one thing that I always advise is have reminders in your daily life to be present. Maybe it's a note on your, car, window or something, or on dashboard that says, take a deep breath. Maybe it's a note on your mirror in the restroom that says smile, or again, breathe. Maybe it's, for me, a reminder on my calendar that pops up every day that says, remember to meditate, right? Anything that brings me back to the present moment, because spirituality it's a path, it's a journey, it's a practice. It's not a destination. So if we get practice being present and landing in our bodies, one of my favorite things is to go for a walk, and I call it the truth walk, which is if there's anything I'm wanting to intend to manifest, I will think of that and go for a walk. And every step I think that, whatever it is, that is, if I'm wanting to be more present, think about being present, or inner peace, or compassion, or whatever it is I'm wanting to hold into in that moment. But I'll do this throughout my day when I don't need it. So that way, when the waves of pain come, when those moments that truly need healing come, I will have all of those moments of having practiced being present so that I can be present when it does happen. So I would say to anyone who's saying, what do you do when the waves of emotion come? Obviously you want to do your best to take deep breaths, sense your body, whatever you can do to land in the present moment. But really, it's like that whole adage, when is the best time to, when is the second best time to plant a tree today? When is the best time? Yesterday, or 10 years ago, whatever that one is. I'm sure I'm mangling up the metaphor completely, but, really, it's in the past. Going through being present and putting that intention out there that allows you to heal in the present moment when it comes up. So practice being present every chance you get so that when you need it, it's a skill that is well developed and a quality that is living more, fully inside you.
So do you actually create a positive picture, like a form of attitudinal healing, where the waves coming through and you just let the wave come through, and you actually go in and ask, what you actually use your power of your hang on a sec, wait a sec. Okay, when you see that, or when you feel that wave come through, do you actually ask to see what it is that relates to? So you actually first of all find what the cause is, and then do you go then and ask what the remedy is, or you've just actually answered what the remedy is by allowing it to flow through you by being grounded? Yeah.
Well, the interesting part about your question is it still holds sort of a false dichotomy, because it assumes that there's a right way to do it in any given moment. And so what I would do is I would say be present in the moment. Because in the moment, it will reveal to you, if you're really being present, it will reveal to you whether or not just being present will release it, or if there is some process, some question, some deeper understanding to look to. So sometimes it could be very much like I'm being present, the pain moves through me, I don't need to know anything about it, it's gone, and I'm good, and it's let go of. Other times, the pain might come in, and it'll say to me, you need to do this, 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 and this when we're done with the pain, you know? And so that is the gift of the present moment, is that we don't have to default to a particular process. We can allow it to reveal to us what process, if any, is needed for the moment.
So if you just allowed it to flow through without gravitating any mental thought to it, you've probably accomplished the biggest thing is, okay, I surrender with ease and grace, gone. Yeah. Your only doubt would be, have I learnt the lesson? Do I get it repeated? In which case, I surrender again. And in which case, where did that come about? Is that when the mental comes in and say, well, okay, I've verbalized that twice and it's come through twice. Or maybe I ought to change my thoughts.
And the mind is powerful in that it can either lead us astray or it can be a laser that focuses in. Okay, if we're just sticking in our heads, it's just going to lead us astray because it's just more ego upon ego. But if we are in the present moment and we are able to ask a clarifying question like, what do I most need to know right now? Or is there anything else I need to know right now? Then in that moment, the mind is helping us cut through the moment, cut through all of the chaff so that we can see in the moment, the present moment will reveal to us, hey, you know what you need to do is this, or just let it go. Don't worry about it. Or you're going to go through this a few more times. Get ready. Right. So, it's not like you do it once and everything is hunky dory. It might be, it might not be, that's the present moment. But like you said, when we can be present and allow the mind to be present as well, right? It's easy to not include everything when I talk about presence. Like I've mostly been talking about, being in your body, but that includes the mind. That includes being present with the thoughts that may arise spontaneously that could be the exact thought we need to release us from the pain that we're feeling. So I would say, when possible, include the mind, include the body, include the heart, include the spirit, include anything that comes up. Even A Course in Miracles, the first, workbook lesson says nothing I see means anything. And then we're supposed to look at every single thing around us and say, this monitor means nothing. This webcam means nothing. These headphones mean nothing. And all it asks is that we don't exclude anything intentionally. So we don't look at the light and they go, or look at the picture of our loved ones and say, well, I'm not going to do the practice on that one because they actually matter to me. Right. So A Course in Miracles. Exactly. A Course in Miracles says, anything, nothing I see means anything. And so, you just come back to that, that's an example of where the mind, and A Course in Miracles really is a mind training program, but the mind can be used to cut through all of the distortions to see what's truly present when we let go of our ideas about everything.
I know in the corporate world, and Julia's really heavily involved in the corporate world, when we were constructing faxes or telexes or faxes, whatever you call them.
I remember those, yes.
So we could actually say emails as well. Well, if there was something that that needed to be said, it was written down, but we were always told, sleep on it, come back to it in the morning, and then review it. And it was like when you went home and you went to bed that night, somehow or another, you went through another process. It seems like a sifting and looking for the gold nuggets. And then when you came back to reread that original draft, you were so pleased that you never sent it because it was constructed. The words that you had were quite venomous, and they produced a picture that anyone receiving that would be mentally picking that thought up. So yeah, we learned how to transmute that and looking for a positive picture that when you're addressing someone. Yeah,
that's powerful and important. One of my relationships and energetics teachers talks about it's so easy to see people and judge them by their biggest mistakes. But if we want to bring out the best in people and bring out the best in our world, then we need to look at people through the lens of their greatest accomplishments. And similarly, if we're going to be sending messages, if we're going to be putting words out into the world, especially physically manifested words, then doing that with the intention of goodness, positivity, connection, authenticity, to intend well carries a lot more. And if a little bit of a break, waiting till the next morning accomplishes that, then that's gold.
Julie.
Yeah, and that takes us into what you're all about, or we've titled it "Manifesting Miracles." Thank you, Chris, for just sharing. What you've been, what you've obviously trained in, and sharing the being present at all three different levels, being open to what the universe is presenting, knowing that there's no right or wrong process, but just being in the moment. You can heal just like that.
Yeah.
And so if people want to get in touch with you, do you counsel? It sounds like you'd be a great mentor or coach. What for the audience, present and future, just talk about that for a few moments.
Yeah, I actually don't do any coaching one-on-one. Everything I do is through emails, videos, blog posts, sharing things on social media. That's where I've thrived. I've done coaching in the past and group coaching, and I found that what I want to do is, or what I feel called to do, I guess is more true, is to serve in a larger way with ways that I can reach a lot of people at once. Like, for example, the Course in Miracles, giving away the lessons one per day for a year. If I were to teach one lesson a day a year, that would take me 365 days. If I set it all up into a system that does it on its own automatically, then any number of people can be served, and it no longer requires my direct attention. And so I tend to think in terms of, what I write. So you're mentioning how you receive my emails that are not just A Course in Miracles, videos, that I go on walks where I share my thoughts. And so for me, what I really want to do is empower people to think for themselves, to critically think, but also to pursue the truth. And so in doing that, I find that my truth is serving through websites, social media, emails, any way in which, even my words can be forwarded on to other people, for example, to serve others who are beyond our community. So you were asking how they can reach me. chriscade.com is the website where I post my work and my blog posts. I also have a website called spiritualgrowthevents.com. And that's where I basically give away a bunch of, free webinars or free summits, things like that. So from all different modalities. So if someone wants to learn meditation or Reiki or Tai Chi or, any number of things, they'll find that at spiritualgrowthevents.com, and it's all free. Because what I found was I used to sell my courses online, and Spirit called me to start giving them away. So I stopped selling what I had created, started giving it away, and now have made the conscious choice that, with the exception of some of the things I sell from the Miracle Store, like this shirt and coffee mugs and things that have an actual hard cost, if it doesn't have a hard cost, I just give it away for free, because that's just what Spirit in the present moment told me to do. So I trusted that guidance.
What was that site again? Spiritual events? What?
Spiritualgrowthevents.com.
Jeff is going to put that onto the
awesome.
So that people can do that. Well, thank you very much for joining us, listeners. You've been listening to Chris Cade on Dreaming the New Dream. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us, and Jeff from Radio for Mediated. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for having me. It has been a wonderful adventure, and I'm grateful to be of service.
I'll just put that up there. I'll get this so when people can see it. Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
And I'll just do that, so I've got an idea what they're looking at.
Right, yep.
Okay, so that's all that. Put that back. Okay, so just remember, our show normally goes at 7 o'clock. So our listeners and viewers will come on later in the night to watch a show that's already been pre-done. So there'll be questions that will come in later on. So it's just a case of going back to the individual sites later on to add extra your commentary. Yeah, that's just part and parcel of doing the show a bit earlier, but mine. So we're really mind soulful about the fact that it's your time zone, which is now it's 4 o'clock, just gone past here in Australia. So what are you, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock?
Nope, 11 after 11 p.m. Yeah.
11 p.m. Well, thank you for staying up. During the week. Fantastic.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad that we could make the time work, and I'm just grateful to serve your audience. And when the show is live on Facebook, Julia, just send me the link and I'll share it on my Facebook page as well. I know the event was on my page, but I can also just share it.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's been a great blessing, Chris. Thank you very much, everyone that's joined us.
Good night. Have a wonderful afternoon.